Welcome back to the Broad Street Sports Podcast featuring Zachary Chavey, and today I'm going to be giving you my 2025 mock draft. Obviously, with the NBA draft being a few hours away, I'm just going to give you my quick thoughts and who I have going. I'm not going to do any trades, just if the teams stay the same, I'm just going to tell you where I think they're going to go. Obviously, not much thought into this. Cooper Flagg is going number 1 to Dallas. Get that generational prospect. Get him in Dallas. He was an absolute freak last year for Duke, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the NBA next year. Going on to number 2 now, the San Antonio Spurs. I think this is another no-brainer, although they do have enough guards with De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, obviously the Rookie of the Year last year. But obviously, getting as much young talent you can for Wemby is A+ no matter how you do it. And I think Dylan Harper's a pick for them out of Rutgers. He was an absolute freak last year. He had 19, but he scored 19.4 points per game last year, but he was a great overall point guard. Reminds you a lot of his father, Ron Harper, the way he's able to assist and get these other players the ball. And him and Ace Bailey were great last year, and Dylan Harper I just like a little bit more. He has all the intangibles you want out of a day 1 point guard. So he goes number 2 to the Spurs. And now this is where the draft officially begins. As a Sixers fan, going into the early draft process, I wanted Ace Bailey. I thought he would be a perfect fit. Put him out at the 3 with Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, Ace Bailey, Paul George, and Embiid. That would be a perfect starting 5. But obviously what his management team has done these past couple weeks during the draft process pretty much I think will sway us away from drafting him because all the concerns that are facing him, obviously they want him to go between 6 through 8, which is the Wizards, the Pelicans, and the Brooklyn Nets. I honestly think the best pick for the Sixers here is VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor. He can do a lot of things, and I feel like letting him develop is the perfect thing you can do. Like you can still put him at the 3 in my opinion. I was 6'5" is a little small for a 3, but still put him at the 3, let him develop, and he could easily be like I've heard comps of him being like a Dwayne Wade, a young Victor Oladipo before his injuries. And honestly, as a Sixers fan, I would take that if that was the case. So I think VJ Edgecombe knows number 3 here to the Sixers. Number 4 now for the Charlotte Hornets. Obviously, Trey Johnson has been the consensus pick throughout the early draft process, but gaining a lot of steam has been Con Knippel out of Duke, and I honestly think that's who the Charlotte Hornets are going to take because it makes a lot of sense. LaMelo Ball has been dealing with injuries ever since he got into the NBA, and Brandon Miller has been great, but he's also been dealing with injuries. So if you bring in a guy like Con Knippel, be that day 1 starter for you, and when LaMelo and Brandon Miller are down or can't play, you can play Con Knippel pretty much anywhere, and he can get you buckets every single night. He can shoot the lights out. Him and Trey Johnson easily are the 2 best shooters in the draft. I like Con Knippel a little bit more than Trey Johnson because Knippel's defense is a little bit better than his. But standing at 6'7", he can play shooting guard, small forward. He can also handle the ball for you at point guard. So I think this is a perfect pick for Charlotte. And it's a better pick than they made last year, that's for sure. Moving over to number 5 with Utah. I think Trey Johnson's also been mocked here a lot, but I like Jeremiah Fears here more from Oklahoma. Put him in at the point guard. He's going to be that point guard you need him to be, and averaging 17.1 points per game last year. He's also a great defender too. So having a defensive point guard is always great, and one who can score. He could be that ultimate point guard for you next year, and I feel like Utah needs a person like that. I know they've always been talking about Jaylen Brown and possibly trading for him. I don't really get the appeal of that because you would already have to give up enough assets enough to get him, and then at that point, are you really a winning team to go get a guy like Jaylen Brown? I really don't think so. So I think Jeremiah Fears is the pick here for Utah. Moving on to number 6, where officially the Ace Bailey watch starts, and I think this is where it starts and it ends. Ace Bailey, if Ace Bailey falls here, I know he's having these concerns right now. The teams are and stuff like that. But if he falls to 6, Washington can't pass up on him. Go draft the guy that he can be what he wants to be there, a number 1 scorer, what his management team wants him to be that number 1 scorer. Because Washington, they have some young guys like Bilal Coulibaly, they have Bub Carrington, and they have Alex Sarr. But then it's a bunch of full of veterans, obviously getting Marcus Smart. They have Chris Middleton, and then obviously getting CJ McCollum yesterday in the trade with the Pelicans where they sent Jordan Poole. I honestly think Ace Bailey is the pick for them here. It works out for both parties, I think, and he goes number 6. Moving on to number 7 with the New Orleans Pelicans. I think this is another no-brainer. Draft Kamon Watch out of Duke. This guy is an athletic freak. He can do stuff on the defense and offensive end. He's that perfect lob threat for you where he can go up and catch those lobs and slam it. At 7'2", 250 pounds, it's tough to guard him in the paint. And he's only developing as a center as a whole. So as the time goes on, if you get him the right development process and get him in the gym, he's only going to improve better. He's only going to improve more as a center. And he's already great on the defensive end, being able to block any shot. So I think it's a perfect pick for the Pelicans. Put him in at the 5, have your center of the future, and then continue to build that core now that you have Jordan Poole, if Zion Williamson can stay healthy, and then you obviously have the 2 guys in Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. So moving on to number 8 now with the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, they have 5 first-round picks, but I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not going to be doing any trades. But I do expect at least 1 or 2 of them to be traded tonight. I think this is where Trey Johnson goes. Like I said, he can shoot the lights out. He'd be a perfect scorer for Brooklyn. Let him develop as a whole. Let him get his defensive game up more. And he's already averaging 19.9 points per game last year with Texas, and he was shooting the lights out as well. He's more known as a three-point shooter, but to average that much as a known three-point shooter is insane. I feel like Brooklyn would be the perfect spot for him at number 8. So moving on to number 9 now with the Toronto Raptors. I think this is where Derek Queen goes. They've already built a good enough core with Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickley, and R.J. Barrett, and the former Rookie of the Year, Scotty Barnes. Getting a guy like Derek Queen, who's already great on the offensive end and can be that defensive end center at 6'10", 246. He was averaging 16.5 points per game last year. He was carrying Maryland in the NCAA tournament, and I feel like he'd be that perfect guy down in the paint, and he can still get you buckets consistently. He has a handle, and you don't. I know we see a lot of them centers today, obviously Embiid, Jokic, guys like that with a handle, but Derek Queen, we barely see them come out of college anymore, but Derek Queen would be the perfect fit at the 5. Get him in there, like I said, with Ingram, Scotty, Emmanuel, and RJ. That's a perfect young core. It sounds one to me. So moving on to number 10 now with the Phoenix Suns, obviously the pick they got in the Kevin Durant trade. I think this is the perfect place for a guy like Carter Bryant. You put Carter Bryant in, he could be a perfect, not necessarily, like you can let him develop. And I think if I'm Phoenix, just trade Devin Booker, trade Bradley Beal, and completely retool this team. There's no point in trying to retool this team and still contend. They're not going to contend. You have an owner that sold all the farm that they had to get Kevin Durant in the first place. They just got a small sample size that back trading Kevin Durant. Continue to do that. You saw how it worked for OKC when they blew it up, so maybe Phoenix should give it a try. Because last time I checked, it wasn't that long ago when they were in the NBA Finals and 2 wins away from winning with a core of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton. So I think Phoenix should honestly recoup and rebuild, and this is where it starts taking a developmental guy, Carter Bryant. Now moving to number 11 with the Portland Trailblazers. I think this is where a guy like Noah Essengay should go. You can kind of play him anywhere. Obviously, they traded Anthony Simons and they got Drew Holiday in the trade. I still understand why they necessarily did that, but I think Noah Essengay would be a perfect pick for Portland here at number 11. So moving on to number 12 now with the Chicago Bulls. I think this is a perfect place for a guy like Kasparis Giannakis to go. They obviously have a young core of Pat Williams, which they've been rumored to trade. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world because they kind of gave him a bad contract. They have Vucevic. They should trade him. They should just honestly go young. I know there's been rumors about Kobe White. I really like Kobe White as a player, so I don't necessarily think they should trade him. And then they obviously hit on their pick last year with Matas Buzelis, and then they have Josh Giddey. They have a decision to make with him if they want to re-sign him. I think he's an RFA, so they really have the decision if they either want to match the contract or let him go. But I think Kasparis Giannakis is the perfect pick for him. Perfect pick for Chicago here at 12. So moving on to pick 13 with the Atlanta Hawks. I think this is where a guy like Edgar Demon from BYU should go. Obviously, they just traded for Porzingis, so they really don't need any centers. You can put Edgar Demon at the 2, have a lineup of him, Trae Young, Zachary Richardson, the number 1 pick from last year, and then Porzingis, Onyeka Okongwu, and then obviously you can maybe run a Jalen Johnson off the bench, or even run Edgar Demon off the bench last year, let him develop as a whole. But I feel like this is a perfect pick for Atlanta here, and this is the pick they got from that Kevin Huerter trade a little while ago. So moving on to number 14 now with San Antonio, which they have their second pick now in the first round. This one I believe is from the Atlanta Hawks, is from the DeJounte Murray trade. So honestly, I think with this pick here, they should go with a guy like Thomas Sorber. I think getting great depth behind Victor Wembanyama, a guy that obviously got hurt last year from Philly, went to Archbishop Ryan, and only played 1 year at Georgetown. But he was great before he got hurt last year, and I feel like getting him behind a guy like Wemby would be absolutely sick. The way both these centers are able to play, they're super tall, they can score at an amazing clip. I think Thomas Sorber is the perfect pick for him here because he not only he can play behind Wemby, he can develop more as a player as a whole, and Wemby can teach him a lot more things to help him be better as a center, more than just a defensive guy, also being an offensive threat. So moving on to the 15th pick now with the reigning champion Oklahoma City Thunder. Congratulations to them. I don't know. And they're just going to get even better. This could be honestly the next NBA dynasty if they are just able to bring back really J-Dub and Chet Holmgren. So, but with the 15th pick, I think this is where a guy like Rasheer Fleming, I know he's a little bit down here in the draft, but I feel like Oklahoma City can kind of take a guy and let him develop. And Rasheer Fleming was great at St. Joe's last year. He was a guy who just went off the score sheet. Like, he scored insane numbers every single night for St. Joe's, and I feel like he'd be a perfect player for OKC. Let him to come off the bench, and then eventually he could be that future power forward to you when you put Chet at the 5 and maybe when Hartenstein's gone. But I think Rasheer Fleming is a perfect pick here for OKC at 15. So moving on to number 16 now. We have the Memphis Grizzlies. Honestly, with this pick, they got this pick from the Desmond Bane trade. I think they should take a guy that not necessarily can replace him, but can shoot pretty well as him. I think a guy like Will Riley. He was great last year with Illinois. Get him in there, let him develop as a whole. I know it should be interesting to see because I think Memphis might keep Ja Morant, but Jaren Jackson is he's up for another contract. I don't know if they're going to keep him necessarily, trade him, but I feel like Will Riley, get him in at the 2 guard, not necessarily replace Desmond Bane, but like get him in there, start him, let him develop. I think would be perfect fit for Memphis at 16. So moving on to number 17 now, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, they weren't able to get Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant didn't want to go there, and they had an offer ready for him. So, but for Minnesota here, I think they should take a guy in Liam McNeely from UConn. He was great last year for them up until they got eliminated in the NCAA tournament, but I think he'll be great in Minnesota next to Ant. He can score at an amazing clip, and he's a pretty tall guy. When he gets to the cup, look out because he's an aggressive scorer. He's like, it's tough to stop him when he gets to the hole. So, but I think Liam McNeely is the perfect pick for Minnesota here at 17. Moving on to pick 18, Washington again. They have 2 first-round picks in this draft. I think they should take a guy like Colin Murray Boyles. I think he'd be perfect. The guy from South Carolina, he's another guy who scored an amazing clip last year for the Gamecocks. He scored 16.8 points per game last year at 6'7". And at the power forward position, you can kind of play him at the small forward, power forward, get him over these oversize him over these small forwards. I think Colin Murray Boyles from South Carolina is a perfect pick for Washington. And if I'm Washington, I know they kind of took 2 tall guys with the same kind of build, but I think that's the perfect recipe for them, taking 2 guys like that. Now Brooklyn with their second pick of their 5. I think here they should take a guy in Asa Newell. Obviously, he was from that team that had Cooper Flagg, had the aforementioned. They had the 4 main guys that they had: Cooper Flagg, they had Derek Queen, Asa Newell, and then I believe they had one more player that I can't think of right now. But Asa Newell was another main guy. On Georgia, he was absolutely insane last year. He averaged 15.4 points per game. I swear, most of these guys, most of them are freshmen, which actually is insane. He's another guy. He gets to the cup, good luck stopping him because his dunk package, his aggressiveness at the hole is absolutely insane. So I'm really excited to see what Asa Newell has in the NBA, and I think Brooklyn's the perfect place for him. So moving on to the next pick now, it is Miami at pick 20. This is the pick they got from the Jimmy Butler trade, and I think perfect guy for. Honestly, I've seen Walter Clayton mocked here a lot. Jace Richardson is the perfect pick for him. He was great at Michigan State last year, obviously the son of Jason Richardson. But I think I know Miami's won Walt Clayton, but if Jace Richardson is still there, I would easily take him 100%. He is an amazing scorer. He was great in the NCAA tournament before Michigan State got eliminated, and that'd be the perfect pick for Miami in my opinion. Moving on to number 21 now with the Utah Jazz. I think they should take a guy and Nick Clifford from Colorado State. I don't necessarily need size because they already have Volkan Kessler. I know there's Jonah being there up there and Danny Wolf. I think Nick Clifford from Colorado State, who averaged 18.9 points but last year for the Rams, I think he'd be a perfect pick for Utah, and this might clear the door for them to finally trade Colin Sexton. So, moving on to the 22nd pick now, Brooklyn once again. Honestly, at this point, I think this is where they start to make the trades. But if I'm them, I would take a guy like Danny Wolf. They might trade Nick Claxton this offseason. The team might aggressively want his services, like the Lakers or one of these teams that are trying to win a championship and need a center. If that's the case and they still have this pick, Danny Wolf's the perfect guy. He was great in Michigan last year, and I think he'd be even better in Brooklyn. If I'm Brooklyn and those are my 3 first-round picks, if I keep all of them, that's a haul so far. So moving on to the next pick, it's the New Orleans Pelicans again. They got this pick from Indiana when they just traded it recently. They made that trade. So I think with this pick, they should take a guy like Hugo Gonzalez, the small forward from Spain. He was great. He was great overall overseas last year, and I think a guy like him would be perfect being able to develop here in New Orleans. He won't necessarily have that much pressure on him. I think he'd be the perfect pick for New Orleans at 23. So moving on to number 24 with OKC again. I honestly think this is where Walter Clayton goes. And if I'm the Oklahoma City Thunder and I find a way to get Rasheer Fleming and easily the MVP of the NCAA tournament last year and Walter Clayton, that's a home run for a team that just won a championship. And obviously, like I said, he was the star of the show in the NCAA tournament, obviously leading the Gators to a national championship last year. He was great in the regular season, and he elevated his game even more in the postseason. And if he can go to a team like OKC, there's not much else I need to say. So, moving on to with the 25th pick, it's the Orlando Magic. They obviously just traded for Desmond Bain, so I don't know really what they can do here. Honestly, let's go with a guy like Ryan Kalkbrenner, the center from Creighton. I think he'd be perfect. You can play him behind Wendell Carter. I know they have Mo Wagner, but I think he was great last year, averaging 19.2 points per game as a center. He was aggressive at the cup. I know Creighton didn't go that far in the playoffs, but still, he was great for Creighton. I feel like he'd be even better for Orlando. So, moving on to the 26th pick, like I said, Brooklyn once again. Honestly, at this point, I don't expect them to have this pick, but if they still do, I think they should take Cedric Howard from Washington State. I think he's such a great player. He's another guy who's a great guy on the defensive end. He scores at an amazing clip. Put him in this lineup that's basically in this mock draft full of young guys, and I think that'd be perfect for them. Moving on now to number 27 now. We have the Brooklyn Nets again. So I'm just going to take a guy like I'll take Nolan Trayoni from France. He's another guy. He's one of these France guys who was great overseas and easily deserves to be a first-round pick tonight, I think. But like I said, Brooklyn might not keep all these picks, but if they do, those are the 5 players I can see them doing. Obviously now, with the Boston Celtics, they made a couple interesting trades the past couple days with Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, both trading them to Portland and Atlanta, respectively. They've been getting calls about Jaylen Brown and Derek White. We'll see if they trade them tonight. I don't think it's very likely, but nothing surprises me anymore with the NBA the way it's going. But if Boston does keep this pick and doesn't trade up, I think a guy like they need a center, obviously. They don't have one on the roster. Al Horford's a free agent. Luke Kornet's a free agent. If a guy like Jonah Banger can fall, this guy from France, 6'10", 200 pounds, let him develop. And if he turns out to be a good player, he could be great around Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and whatever other players they bring in. So Phoenix now at pick 29. I think with their second pick, they should take Maxine Rayon. They don't have a center on the roster either. I feel like averaging 20.2 points per game last year for Stanford at 7'1". He can develop as an offensive center and develop his defensive game even better. Like, I feel like if they do keep Devin Booker around, having a guy like Carter Bryant and Maxine Raymond around him, letting those guys develop, Phoenix would have a pretty solid young core, in my opinion. So, moving on now to the 30th pick, the Los Angeles Clippers. I think with this pick, they should take a guy like Drake Powell, the small forward from North Carolina. I know he wasn't the greatest during the season, but he was he was solid during like the tournament to get into the NCAA tournament, but I think he'd be a great guy for North Carolina. He can honestly develop to be a great starter or a great rotation guy when it gets to it. And I feel like the Clippers, I don't really know what to think about them right now. They obviously have Harden, they have Kawhi Leonard. Norman Powell was broke out, and it's going to be interesting to see. But in my opinion, this is my first round mock draft. I'm only going to do first round because that's kind of what I know. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the NBA draft tonight. I hope for a lot of fireworks. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.